Welcome to the Challenges of Change, the podcast where we explore the transformative journey towards self-improvement and personal growth. I'm your host, Laura, a mindset coach in the health and fitness industry, here to guide you through the hurdles that life throws at you. In each episode, we'll delve into practical strategies and insightful discussions to help you manage stress, regulate your emotions, upgrade your mindset, and ultimately reclaim your sense of worth. I'm thrilled to have you join me on this journey of change, challenges, and self-discovery. Welcome back to another episode of the Challenges of Change. And you know her, you love her. It's Coach Jess. She's back and she brought us something juicy, and it is right on point for where we are, because the new year often inspires new habits, new goals. You know, the whole saying, new year, new me. And even if you're not a resolutioner, I'm sure this will still hit home with you, because we all crave some type of growth and change and development. And we often look at habit change. But there's a really frustrating experience when we're trying to build new habits. It's kind of that drop-off phase that causes us to feel like something's wrong with us. What do we not understand? Why do we keep doing this? And we shame ourselves. And when Jess and I were talking offline, she brought up a lot of really good insights as to what's actually going on under the hood. But before we jump into all the insights, she also had a really important story to tell us, because one of the things we often talk about is like habits with health. But what she's about to share is a little bit more about being emotionally regulated and emotionally present in your life, which we hear all the time with our clients. How do we manage our emotions in these situations? And I can't wait for you to hear Coach Jess's story. So, Coach, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me again. So this story, hits home. It's pretty personal, but I wanted to share this with everyone, because when we think about the drop off when it comes to habit change, a lot of us are thinking about, oh, I went to the gym for the first 2 weeks, or I was able to stay on that diet for the first 2 weeks. But habit change can run the spectrum of different types of behaviors and things that we want to change. And so the story I'm bringing today is when I was knee deep in changing an actual emotional response, an emotional knee-jerk reaction that just really wasn't serving me anymore. And I wasn't happy with it. And I knew it came from someplace old. Right? So my family and my background, unchecked anger was just a part of everyday life. And sometimes I think about it's like very animalistic, the way we kind of snarl and snip at each other in order to keep each other in line. And so it wasn't the environment or the atmosphere that I wanted my daughter to grow up in, and it wasn't really the atmosphere or culture that I wanted for my family, my created family of me, my husband, and my children. So this was one big thing that I decided to tackle shortly after my diagnosis, and I was recovering from cancer. So this is why it hits home so deep. So that's my grounding, my foundation for the story. So the story goes that unchecked anger was a habit or a behavior, an emotional reaction that just really wasn't serving. And especially when it came to my very young daughter, I knew that even though I was having a very visceral, very real response of anger, and sometimes even like I feel like rage, just like a lot of fire coming up, I knew that there was nothing that this little girl could be eliciting from me that was worth it. So, there was this like dynamic going on where I was like, in the moment, it felt very real. It felt very natural to me to be that angry. It felt like something terrible was happening and I was intervening, I guess, in a way. But logic brain and logic me, when I'm not in that emotional state, knew I did not like this behavior whatsoever.
Right.
So moving into it, I I did the work, right? I'm learning a lot of things. Not only I'm possibly going through coaching at this point, but also just devouring anything I can read that was going to help. And I knew a lot of things. Intellectually, I knew that fear was a cover emotion.
Mm,
I had learned that. So it was covering something up. So I dug deeper. I knew that it was covering, I eventually discovered it was covering fear, right? So I knew that in those moments when I was having that reaction, I needed to look deeper and say, what are you actually afraid of here? I did that. I said, what are you afraid of here? And it came to light. I'm afraid that I'm not doing a great job as a parent. So one of the reactive states was when my daughter didn't want to eat her green vegetables. And so I'm having this reactive response because the story that is loading up in my mind in this scenario is I'm not doing a good enough job as a parent. If I don't get her to eat her green vegetables as a habit, she is going to grow
mm,
up. She's going to have terrible eating habits. She's possibly going to get right. It goes all the way to she possibly will just eat sugar for the rest of her life and carbs and die of diabetes. Okay, so
mm-hmm,
listen, that's how extreme that fear, if I let it run on and on, that's how extreme it was getting. So once I recognized that I was covering it with fear, that my fear was actually this, that I could actually have a logical conversation with myself in this moment and say, Jess, is it really that important? Is it really are the dominoes going to fall just so? Let's get realistic here. And that's that in a nutshell is the story. And the what I want to point out there is that so many of my clients are meeting me in that moment where they drop off, where they go in, they think I've understood this logically, I've conceptualized this, I should get this now. And then it happens one more time and it feels like a fall off. It
mm-hmm.
feels like they're failing. It feels like this is never going to work. It feels like how come I can know it up here, but when it comes to how it all feels in the real time, how does it still feel like I'm really angry? Like this is really a problem, that I'm still this angry, this still, which means I'm still this afraid. Like, how is that possible when I already know it up here?
Yeah. And thank you for sharing so openly and vulnerably. I really appreciate it because I think this is something that so many people experience, whether it's being a mother, being a leader, being a partner, being a friend, being a kid to an adult parent. Like we notice emotional responses that we don't want to be having. And we can learn, to your point, we can understand the information, but then the next moment that we're in that situation, we have the same response. And we kind of have this unconscious assumption, like, since I know it, it'll change, but it doesn't. And then that creates like, what's wrong with me, and that shame cycle. And to your point, the reason I like this story as like a habit change and habit drop off is I don't think a lot of people recognize like learning how to have different responses, learning how to regulate your emotions. It's a habit, it's a practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something you like, okay, I know it and now I can do it, or I do it once and then I consistently do it. Like it's the same thing with like working out, right? Like you're not going to work out every single day. If you work out 3 days a week or 5 days a week, and let's say your goal is 5 days, but you have a week with 3 days, your goal of working out 5 days a week, it doesn't mean that's not met. You're still working out, but there's space to get curious versus being like, I failed because it wasn't perfect, right? And that whole perfectionism of habit change is actually a really big red flag because we think when it's not perfect, we have to throw in the towel. We're failing, we're doing it wrong. When in reality, that's just the training ground of building the habit itself. Like you don't build a habit perfectly from the get go. It is
Yeah.
ups and down, trial and error, and having the compassion and the patience and the courage to look, understand, try again, look, understand, try again. And the goal of a lot of it is just to get a little bit better after each rep.
Yeah.
So I love that story. And thank you again for sharing it.
Well, I think one of the fun insights when my clients are at that space is I go back to some old training. I don't know if you remember this, but like there's all these stages to habit change. And I think there's like six, right? If you count like actually getting it and being consistent with it as the sixth one. And the fun thing about having that moment where you've learned all this stuff, you're trying to apply it, you understand it conceptually, and it didn't work that first time or that second time you tried it, and there's that frustration there. And the best part is when I get to text my client, or I'm emailing her, or we're talking, and I say, well, the good news is that you're in step 5 out of 6 in habit change at this point. You're already in maintenance at
Mm,
this point, because the even understanding that there's a problem is step one, right? So as you go through those steps of understanding that there is a problem that you want to change, recognizing what's creating it, and then taking action. And there's all these steps that you've already taken before that. So the fact that you are already thinking this should be changing by now, but it hasn't, means you are so close, so close. And what a shame for that to be the thing that makes you slide back. You
yeah.
are in step 5 out of 6 when you're in maintenance. And really, this is where consistency comes in.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, well, first and foremost, our very own coach Eric wrote a great blog about the different stages of habit change. So if you want to understand that more, definitely go to the website. But what you're talking about is like the mindset of the journey, right? And defining what consistency means. Like I often use the example of preparing for a marathon because people conceptually understand, like if I say I'm going to run a marathon, that doesn't mean I'm going to get up one day and go run the marathon. It means I'm agreeing to train regularly at a specific regimen to, you know, take care of my body in a certain way in recovery, to eat in a certain way. Like there's all these unconscious agreements that are made when you set that goal of, I want to run a marathon. Take it to your story. I want to have a healthier response in my home with my child, right?
Mhm.
Okay, there are unconscious agreements in that sentence. What that means to you, how you define consistency, what the work looks like. And when we don't look at the unconscious agreements, we are just focused on the destination. And it's
Yeah,
like literally waking up and running a marathon. And like that, we can realize that's silly. But when we do it psychologically to ourselves, we don't think it's silly. We think we're the problem.
exactly. It goes right back to us being the problem. But the reality is that each of those little test sites, right? Each time we go back, um, it's like sort of like in yoga in balance poses. I don't know if anybody will relate to this, but I also do it in when I'm working out, when I'm doing karate. You hold your one leg up, right, to do your quad stretch. You're really trying to balance in those moments. And or in yoga, we balance a lot, and you might notice that you wobble a little, right? Anybody who does that regularly, you wobble a little.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody who's done fitness long enough, they understand that that's a good thing. Those are all
Yes.
your stabilizers moving and trying to keep you stable. But that little shaking that's happening is like little tiny muscles working out,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
building themselves up and building muscles so that one day you're able to just stand there like a statue with one leg,
Right.
and it's nothing to you. And the same goes for these little moments that you think, oh, I've already got this logically. Why isn't it changing in here? And the reasoning behind that, well, I don't know if it's the reasoning, but I tell you, it works perfectly with it, is there are going to be little stabilizer moments. There are going
Mm-hmm.
to be little insights and ahas that you're going to get throughout this process that's going to kind of build on one another until this habit of responding differently is so second nature to you because it's been built layer after layer after layer. It just makes so much more sense to you, right? It started logically, but then it started to change physiologically once
Mm-hmm.
you actually start pushing it and creating that action over and over and over again, very intentionally. And everything you learn throughout that process, whether it be frustrating or joy or an insight or an aha or anything like that, all of those are part of the practice.
It is. And I think that's a great example because I regularly would tell my clients, like, if you almost fall, or even if you fall, but you're trying to like get your balance, that's you literally strengthening yourself for the next time. Like the journey, right? It's not just jumping into a perfect statue. It's not just jumping into running a marathon. It's not just jumping into being able to regulate your emotions differently. It's not just jumping into being able to go to the gym consistently, right? We want what we want and that's fine, but we can do ourselves this a kindness and look at what is the training ground for that. Hey guys, it's me. I just want to pause you for a brief moment because there's something important that I think you need to know about. So often when I'm in sessions, I hear people talking about how lonely they are, how anxious they are, and we really do need each other. And I've seen through a lot of my corporate work the power of growing and evolving together. So I am super excited to announce that I have launched my community, the Challengers Circle, where you get to come in, become a challenger, connect with other people going on personal growth journeys, understand what the circumstances are like, share your challenges, and see how similar we all are. And there are so many resources in there to help you, from a personal coach to guide you through it, different chat rooms to share experience, different labs where you can literally practice boundary setting, practice saying no, practice regulating your nervous system. Whatever it is that your challenge is, we have created such an in-depth platform that can really, really help you create the change you want to see because it's not just about the information. It's not just about knowing. It's about the ability to apply. And because we believe in this so wholeheartedly, we are giving anyone who joins a full free month of everything that we offer with the personal guidance of a coach to make sure you are supported, you are accountable, and you are being guided through. And after those 30 days, you can decide which level works for you. If you want to stay in the free level, that is perfect. We want to see what you use. And between now and the end of the year, if you do decide that one of the paid tiers is what's best for you, we are offering $100 off to anyone who joins before 2026. So if you are ready to accept the challenge, truly enact the change that you've always craved in your life, now is the time, and we have created the zone, the arena for you. It's time to come home to yourself, and that is what the Challenger Circle stands for. What is that going to look like? How will, and it makes me curious actually, because what I'm thinking is, how will I know I'm heading in the right direction? And we think and talk so much about consistency, but consistency is a great mirage for perfection. And that's typically what creates the tipping of the drop off. So is it about consistency or is it about progress in the right direction? Like, even if you notice like she doesn't eat her peas and you get angry and you notice the anger and then you run out of the room versus yelling at her, or maybe you run out of the room, you come back and you still yell at her, like, well, you had the awareness in the moment and you ran out of the room. And
Yeah.
maybe the next time it's okay, I don't have to run out of the room, be like, that's okay, we're going to eat our peas. And then you get one sentence and then the second sentence is angry, right?
Yeah.
How do we know when we're heading in the right direction? I think that's
That's
so
such a
much
good
more important
question.
than consistency.
It is because, and I'll tell you why, because consistency can go in the wrong direction, can it? One of a
Yeah.
great example my client brought up is if you like hurt your ankle and you start
Yeah.
to fixture it, right? And
Yeah.
then it takes a while, and even after it heals, right, you got a little bit of a funny gait going on because you've already created a habit, but not in the right direction. You've created a bad habit. I don't like
Right.
saying it, but
So I think that like rather than thinking about this is the goal, I think it's less about like, okay, this is what I want to experience. I want to experience more regulated response with my family, coworkers, whatever. And this is how I know I'll head in the right direction. I'm heading in the right direction. And this
Yeah.
is how I know I'm not heading in the right direction and I need to understand or practice or train for something.
Yeah.
Because
So
it's
to
almost
answer
like,
the question though, right? Oh, go ahead. I was stepping on you.
you're fine. It's almost like we have to change the language of goal setting because it's
Yeah.
already so distorted and has so many unconscious attachments that like we can't talk about consistency without people immediately going to perfectionism with it. So it's like, okay, this is what I want. This is what the training ground could look like. I'll know I'm making progress in the right direction if I see blank, 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 blank. And I know I'm heading in the wrong direction if I see blank, 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 blank. And small caveat here, if you're heading in the wrong direction, make sure you're not looking at it from a perfect lens. Like if you're trying to build something new, it's not going to be consistent all the time. It's going to have ups and downs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Absolutely.
think that's a better framework to think through goals to understand the journey and have your back because you're not the problem. How you're thinking is just making it a little bit more trippy.
Yeah. I think plugging in to answer your question though, I think plugging into why we want this thing. So that makes me think of values, priorities, that sort of thing. That's really what you want to plug into to make sure you're going the right way. And then I think the exercise is really important is to not only plug in with those values, priorities, and whatnot, but then the part that you said, what does that look like? That's visualization in my world. So and I'm a very visual thinker anyway, but in my mind, going through it and saying, how ideally would I like this to go? Right? But not
Mm.
assuming I'm going to get there and it's going to happen ideally and unfold the way I want to. But let me actually either say it out loud or actually ruminate on this or actually write this down. What do I actually expect to happen here?
And how do I expect it to feel?
How do I expect it to feel? How do I expect this to go? And really get clear on that because part of the process, right, the trial and error, the trial and correction that's going to go on here is that you may find that your ideal is ridiculous. It's kind of impossible, or maybe it's just a little too ideal, too perfect. We're talking about human beings after all. And so getting really clear on what you expected will also help you understand the emotions you're having when it doesn't go the way that you expected.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a really key point because, most people aren't very attuned to their emotions. And what we don't realize is our emotions live in our motivational triad. Like they are what motivate us. That's actually one of the key purposes of our emotions is to motivate us. And so when we aren't getting it to your point the way we want it to be, we're going to experience uncomfortable emotions. Pause, because that's the moment where we can choose to get curious and look at like, okay, what's not working? Is it how I'm thinking about it? Is it what's my expectations are? Is it the actual time of when I'm trying to do this? Is it that I didn't recognize my capacity and I need to do something before I go into this moment that can often disrupt me, right? Like what's missing? But we don't often pause in that moment. We just look at what's not going the way we want it to go. And I think so often we have an expectation of how we think it should feel. And when it doesn't feel that way, we get frustrated. But no one ever said it was going to feel that way to begin with. You have no
Yep.
evidence. You didn't even experiment to see if that was true for you. It's just the hope that if I do this, if I can be this, if I can look this way, then I will feel blank. But maybe you need to feel blank as you're doing it to actually have this energy. And I think that's the distortion because we expect the feeling. And when we don't get that feeling, we often feel deceived, even if it's by ourselves.
Yeah, it'll feel like we may get the wrong signal. We may think we're going in the wrong direction.
Right.
We may feel like we have to start from square one for some reason in that
Yeah.
space. Um, or we could feel frustrated, right? Like we talked about, like, what is wrong with me here? What am I doing wrong? When in reality, what you were just explaining to me, my coach's ears couldn't help but go like prick up, and I immediately started to think of surrender, surrender in this moment.
Mm,
Right? You think it's supposed to go this perfect visualized way that you had, but in these moments, if we could have the courage to step back and say, well, maybe it's not working out the way I wanted to because it's supposed to work a different way. Like,
strategy.
take
Yes.
what you want off of the table. What you want is still on the table, but now you're realizing in this moment, this is a perfect opportunity for us to realize that we're not the only ones in charge here, right? We are, to pull out a term, co-creator. We're working alongside life or the universe or God or whoever you want to talk to.
Whatever. Right.
Whatever you want to say that is, somebody else has input besides you in these scenarios. And when we are able to take a step back and let go of the vision that we had, still holding on to the core of it, the
Mm.
why, right? But letting go of the vision that we had for just a moment to allow what's happening to happen and to try to understand it on its own instead of
Ooh,
comparing your expectation.
okay. I agree with so much of that, but when you said still holding on to the why, you and I privately talk about why all the time, and I'm all about the why. I'm curious in your experience, so I don't know if this is true yet. I feel like when I've experienced it with clients, their why is an expectation of what they want to feel.
Mm,
Is that what you, because that's what we were just talking about, right? Like be careful of the unconscious agreement that you're going into of like, if I do blank, then I'll feel blank, right? That's kind of the, if I'm regulated in my response to my daughter, then I'll feel proud of the mother I am. If I'm consistent going to the gym, then I'll feel comfortable and confident in my skin, right? Like these are, if I blank, then I feel.
yeah,
Is the why, and when you listen to your clients, is it about how they want to feel?
that's such a good question. Let me sit back in it to make sure. Because a lot of times it is. It is how they want to feel, but they've got some sort of explanation attached to that feeling.
Okay. So I think the why alone might need some sourcing because I even skated past that in my brain until I was listening to him, like, that could be a feeling, like that's the distortion. Why do I want to feel that way? How does that align with who I am? Why is it important for me to be that person? What values does that align with who I want to show up as? Like,
Yeah,
I like that you use the word surrender because a lot of people don't like it. And yet, what we don't realize is true control comes from surrendering, right? It's such a
yes,
deception if we don't control the outside world, but we surrender to the things that happen on the outside world, the things we can't control. We actually give ourselves the freedom to learn how to control or manage ourselves
that's
to
right.
respond the way we want to lead ourselves the way we want to. And like that's ultimately what we're talking about. So when you are setting goals, know your why, but make sure you source it out because if it's just an expectation of what you want to feel, you're likely going to experience the drop off because you're not really attuned with what it means to you in your depths. And that space of questioning why and getting to know that is actually where you start to gain control and you can step into being more of a leader in your own mind and how you co-create, how you shape your life experience. Like it's much easier to do hard things when you understand why it's important to you, what you're standing for, what you're fighting for. Like in your story, like it was very important to you to create a home where your daughter could feel safe with her emotions. And you were wise enough to recognize that your anger response was not going to create that. You had compassion and empathy for yourself for where it came from, why you experienced it, and you were brave enough to do it. So many parents struggle with. People, parents will say, I would die for my kid. But would you
Yeah.
grow for your kid? Would you evolve for your kid? Would you live for your
Yeah.
kid? Like, would you
Would
do the
you
fucking
truly
work
live for your kid? I love
for
that
your
one.
kid? Right. Because honestly, it's easy to die for your kid, but to do the
Almost did
work
it.
to
Almost
be
did
a
it by
better,
accident.
right. But to do the work to be a better human being, to give your kid or your workplace and culture or your parents or your partner a an experience with you that aligns with who you want to be, how you want to be understood, your personal brand, so to speak, that's actually control. That's you stepping into the leadership in your own mind, but it requires you to be more discerning versus focused on urgency.
No, that's true. And I'm glad you brought control up because that tends to be, I kind of like the little gremlin right in the corner that's grumbling because I expected it to be a certain way. I expected it to feel a certain way. It's funny too. I have this quote that I say all the time, and I'm like, I tell my clients this, and I tell myself this all the time, and I go, um, the way you want to feel is on the other side of all of that discomfort.
Mm,
Because the truth is that, yeah, we do tend to work towards a feeling, whether we're conscious of that or not. We're working
right,
towards a feeling. And uh, it can be a letdown if we're not getting the clues, the feeling that we want to feel. It could feel like we were going in the wrong direction. But it's when you said, whether you use the word anchor it or what the term that you use, but like understanding the value system that's behind the feeling that you want so badly,
right.
right? So
And
yeah, go ahead.
subtle, we move towards what we want to feel, but sometimes we're also moving towards what we don't want to feel, or excuse me, away from what we don't want to feel. Like, I don't want to get fired. So I am trying to be perfect with the presentation, right?
Mhm.
So notice that the feeling can sometimes be towards what we want or away from what we don't want. That was the only thing because I think that's what I hear a lot with clients is they don't always know what they want to feel, but they are very aware of what they don't want to feel. And that's still your
Yeah,
emotions motivating you.
that is still your emotions motivating you because imagine this, like I don't want to feel sometimes that uh, tremendous amount of burn in my muscles when I'm lifting those weights. Sometimes when I wake up, it's not the first thing I think like, oh, you know what I could really use is some like core burning. I nonetheless get up because deep down I know that when I feel that core burn, I'm actually getting somewhere. But it took a while to understand that, right? At first, getting up, and if I'm in that maintenance stage, there's definitely going to be a lot more receptors in there going, no, that's going to suck. Don't do
Yeah.
it. Get up.
Yeah.
It's going to feel way better laying in bed. It
Stay
isn't,
cozy.
yeah, hit sneeze. Um, but now, right after I didn't feel like it, I created more consistency in finding pleasure in that burn, knowing that every time I feel that burn, I'm getting a little bit stronger. I'm able to
Mm,
hold that plank a little bit longer, right?
mm,
You guys all, I don't mind sharing this because it is a little embarrassing, but like when I started building my strength regimen, it was strength that I wanted. It wasn't to look great in a bathing suit or any of those things. I had had multiple abdominal surgeries. I just wanted to feel strong. I wanted to know that if I was put in a situation where I had to keep my daughter safe, right? She was only 9 months old when I went through all that. If I had to keep my daughter safe, was I just, were we just wolf food or whatever, like wild
mm.
animal food? Or am I strong enough to keep my daughter safe? And that's what drove me every single day. I wanted to be able to, like, if I had to hold a plank like above a chasm and let her like walk across my back. Could I do it? Could I do it for 1 minute? Could I do it for 2 minutes? Could I do it for 3 minutes? Could I do it as long as I needed to? That's what kind of drove me. So, like, it's redefining what that feeling is
Mm.
you want to feel.
Yeah.
And again, what that attaches to in your mind.
Right. Because
Brain.
that's such a like think about the motivation you sourced for yourself by clarifying why being strong was important to you. So when you're cozied up in your bed, tempted to hit the snooze, you everything's saying, stay in bed. It's warm here. You don't need to work out. burning, nah, we don't want that. But remembering, like, no, I want to feel strong enough to protect my kid. I
Yeah,
want to feel confident in my ability to navigate this world and protect the people I love. That type, I want to, not
hmm,
I have to,
yeah,
right? That alone is such a different motivational energy. And it was a great example because we think about goals so poorly. And I think this is kind of like the practice for our listeners, right?
yeah,
Society says a goal, you set a goal, you understand what is required in the sense of like I'm going to do this thing this many times, and if you do anything that doesn't look exactly like that, it's wrong and you're failing. And that's
yep,
not true. And rather, I guess what we're suggesting is to step into more of a leadership role in your own mind, to notice what you want. Observe your experience. Why do I want it? And mind you, do this non-judgmentally because we don't learn when we're being judgmental. And just
right.
observe, like, why is this important to me? What is this going to give me? What values does this align with? When I'm cozied up in my bed, why is this going to be important enough for me to get out, to embrace the discomfort?
Yeah,
And
why is
until you
this more
can,
important than my comfort?
right, and gather like the data points and get that clarity for yourself and clarify like what you want the new pattern to look like. Visualize how you want it to look, not necessarily feel. Because even with the anger situation, like when you are being regulated in your response, you still experienced anger inside. You just had enough bandwidth and capacity to regulate yourself and respond. And with practice,
Hmm.
slowly that anger dissipated and it just became a regulated response. But in the beginning, the emotion's still there. You just have enough capacity and bandwidth to lead yourself. So make sure you know it's what I want is being able to communicate in a calm way, whatever it looks like. And do yourself the service of looking at the journey.
Yeah,
Where is going to be the ankle wobbles? What are going to be the moments that you know are going to be hard and you're going to be prepared for, not as prepared to prevent necessarily, but an understanding of this is the journey. I don't
yeah,
expect perfection because I'm human. And looking at the unconscious agreements we're making when we set into that, and then just define what the right direction looks like for you and what the wrong direction looks like.
yeah. And I think you highlighted, I think that final step is recognizing what's going to get in your way, right? So once you've set it all up for yourself, get practical, right? Let's get pragmatic here. We can go into this with high hopes and expectations, but the reality is that if we are being a leader, we're going to
Mm,
look at what's going to get in our way, and that creates for you an opportunity instead of a misstep, right? So if
mm,
you already know that we're having peace tonight for dinner, right? You already know it's coming down the or what's really going to throw you for a loop. Oh, if this happens, I don't know that I can handle it. This is definitely going to make me drop off and fail, right? Getting up to with the alarm. Oh, it's a snow day. They just called it. Hey, it's going to make me want to sleep in. Right. So you know what's coming. Let's be pragmatic and understand this is what's going to happen. And then before it's and you're in the weeds, before
mm.
all that happens, then decide how do you want to handle that when that pops up.
Yeah.
And here's why it's an opportunity, because even if you don't handle it the way you said you were planning onto it, you can go into it with eyes wide open,
Hmm.
under the visors of the emotional response that you're having, but with eyes wide open, going, this is an opportunity for me to see in real time exactly how I get tripped up,
Right.
exactly what happens, exactly what I'm thinking that makes me feel the way that I feel, that creates the behavior that I exhibit instead of the one that I want. So if you take those steps of defining what's going to get in your way and realizing that you're even creating a strategy, but realizing that you get to walk into that situation now with eyes wide open, and even if anything you take away from it, the observations of what actually took place, even if you didn't get the outcome that you wanted, it is fuel for doing better the next time.
Yes. I agree. I think we just need to slow ourselves down a little bit to have our own backs.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm so happy you brought this topic to us because it's very frustrating when we're trying to grow and we don't understand the journey and we don't understand that imperfection is part of habit building. And that doesn't mean you're dropping off. It doesn't mean anything is wrong with you. It's a cue to get curious, to look at what you aren't seeing, to get more data so you can adapt and understand how you need to train yourself so the next repetition, you're going to be more prepared. But if it was as simple as A plus B, we would already be doing it. The human being is a complex creature and we owe ourselves more compassion. So I really, really do appreciate it because I do think this is going to hit home with a lot of people. Um, Thank you so much for your time, your presence, your vulnerability, your stories, everything that just makes you you. I so appreciate you.
Absolutely. I love being here. I love our conversations, our talks. They're always so good.
And if this helped anyone, if you felt like, yes, this is exactly what I needed to hear, please share this with a friend, leave us a review, leave us a comment, reach out. We love interacting with you. But until next time, embrace your challenges and take things one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of The Challenges of Change. If you're ready to stop stressing and reclaim your sense of worth, be sure to visit my website at www.changebychallenge.com. There, you'll find loads of resources, blog posts, and information on how to work with me, Cora, as your personal mindset coach. Remember, if it doesn't challenge you, it won't change you. Don't let burnout or any other obstacle hold you back from living your best life. Take the first steps towards positive transformation today. Thank you again for listening. Stay confident, stay inspired, and embrace the challenges of change. Until next time.